There is a particular silence that most people experience only once or twice in their lives, if they are paying attention. It arrives without announcement and stays longer than you think it should. You notice it first in the morning, when you wake, and for a moment before the usual machinery of your mind starts grinding, there is a flatness. Not sadness exactly. Not depression in the clinical sense. Just a strange absence of color in things that used to gleam. The coffee tastes like coffee. The sunrise looks like a sunrise. Your phone buzzes with the familiar notifications, but they land in you like stones landing in still water. They sink without ripples. You go through the motions of getting ready. You shower, dress, move through your apartment or your home with a kind of mechanical precision that troubles you because you recognize it in yourself, and you are not sure when it arrived or what it means. This feeling, this odd displacement from the world you used to inhabit so naturally, it is happening to you right now, or it has happened, or it is about to. You know the sensation. The world continues, but something in your relationship to it has shifted sideways into a space you did not choose and cannot easily name. The worst part is that you cannot explain it to anyone. When people ask you how you are, you say fine, and you mean it literally. You are fine, functioning, not broken in any way that shows. But there is a quality to your fineness that feels dishonest, as if you are speaking about yourself from behind a thick glass wall. You watch other people, and something in you observes them with a distance that feels almost cruel, almost clinical. They laugh, and you see the mechanics of laughter. They cry, and you see the performance of tears. They speak passionately about things they care about, and you listen and understand the words perfectly. But the emotional resonance that should be there, that used to be there, has dampened to almost nothing. You wonder if you're depressed. You wonder if something is genuinely broken inside you, some essential capacity for feeling that has atrophied or died. You scroll through lists of symptoms. You recognize yourself in half of them. You do not recognize yourself in the other half. So you are left suspended in uncertainty, which is worse than either clarity or ignorance. What deepens the fear is that this started innocently enough. Maybe you were stressed. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you were betrayed or disappointed or humiliated in a way that made you question your judgment about other people, about the world, about whether anyone or anything could be trusted. Or maybe there was no discrete event at all. Maybe it just happened gradually, like the sky losing light as evening approaches, so slowly that you did not notice until you looked up and realized that night had fallen without you seeing the transition. And now you are here, in this place where you feel like you are watching your own life from the audience instead of living it on the stage. You are cold toward people you love. You are bored by things that used to excite you. You feel a kind of arrogance in how you see through people, how you understand their motives so clearly, how shallow so many of their concerns seem to you now. And this makes you hate yourself a little, because you were not always like this, or were you? Or did this coldness exist all along, lurking under the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge? Are you finally seeing what you really are, a person who does not feel as deeply as they thought, who is more selfish than they admitted, more hard than they believed themselves to be? The self-accusation can be relentless. You turn it over and over in your mind, like a stone you cannot put down. But what if the fault line you are standing on is not a collapse at all? What if the strange displacement you feel, the flatness, the distance, the cold clarity, what if these are not signs of a broken system, but signs of a system preparing to reorganize itself? There is no way to know this without living through it, and the living through it is uncomfortable enough that your mind will grasp at any explanation that makes it feel less like a slow deterioration. But consider the possibility that what you are experiencing is not pathology, but metamorphosis. Not an ending, but an interruption. Not a breaking down, but a provisional step away from something that was actually always fragile, always contingent, always dependent on you not looking too closely. Think of it this way. For most of your conscious life, you have been living inside a kind of trance, not in the sense of being asleep, but in the sense of operating within a very narrow bandwidth of awareness. You have been responding to the world through mechanisms that were installed in you long before you had any say in the matter, by your culture, your family, your neurobiology, your habit. These mechanisms are efficient. They work. They allow you to navigate the world without having to consciously decide every single moment. When you see another person's face, you instantly categorize them as friend or threat, as similar to you or different. When you hear music, you feel a certain way without having to think about why. When you're in a room with others, you automatically modulate your behavior according to invisible social scripts that everyone has agreed to follow. You do not have to think about these things. The operating system runs in the background. And this is good. This is necessary. Without these mechanisms, you would be paralyzed. You could not function. But here is what happens when consciousness begins to see the mechanism itself. At first, the mechanism does not break down. It continues to function, but now you are aware of it functioning. You see the strings. You understand how the trick is done, and something shifts. The magic trick is still happening, the illusion is still being performed, but now you cannot unsee the apparatus behind it. When you look at a person you love, you do not stop loving them. But now you also see, with a kind of awful clarity, how much of what you feel is narrative, is construction, is a story you are telling yourself about who they are. When you listen to music, you hear not just the beauty but the mathematical structure underneath it, the way it exploits your neurological vulnerabilities to create an emotional response. When you are in a social situation, you do not stop participating, but you are also watching yourself participate, observing the performance you are giving. And this doubling of consciousness creates a peculiar kind of emptiness. This is where the flatness comes from. It is not a symptom of depression, though it can feel indistinguishable from depression. It is more like the experience of seeing a magic trick explained. The trick itself does not disappear. The magician still waves their hand and the card is still missing from the deck. But now you know how they did it, and it no longer evokes wonder. It evokes a kind of blank recognition. The wonder requires ignorance. The ignorance is now gone, and you cannot simply decide to get it back. You cannot unknow what you have seen, but there is something more happening here, something deeper than simple disenchantment. It is not just that the magic trick no longer works on you, it is that you are in the process of developing a different relationship to reality altogether. For most of your life you have been operating on what we might call the level of belief. You believed the world was a certain way. You believed other people were motivated by the things they said they were motivated by. You believed your own emotions were authentic expressions of your inner self. You believed that happiness was something you should be pursuing. That happiness was good. That unhappiness meant something was wrong. All of this worked because you were not examining the beliefs themselves. The beliefs were transparent. They were the water you were swimming in. You could not see them because you were inside them. But now something has changed. Some small crack has opened up in the edifice, and you have begun to notice your own mind working. You notice that you believe things. You notice that belief is something that happens, something that can be observed. And this is the beginning of the end of that particular mode of consciousness. This is what genuine awakening looks like. And I want to be very clear about this because it runs counter to every popular conception of awakening you have ever encountered. Awakening does not feel good. Awakening does not feel like enlightenment or transcendence or coming home or any of the other metaphors that spiritual practitioners love to use. Awakening, at least in its early stages, feels like losing your home. It feels like the solid ground you were standing on, turning transparent beneath your feet. Imagine that your entire life has been like watching a film. You are completely absorbed in the narrative. The characters move you. The plot surprises you. The ending matters enormously. You laugh, you cry, you cheer for the hero, and despise the villain. The experience is vivid and total. Your consciousness is entirely absorbed in the world of the film. And then gradually you begin to notice something. You notice that you are in a theater. You notice the other people around you. You notice the screen itself. You notice the light projecting from behind. And once you have noticed these things, you cannot fully absorb into the film again in the same way. You can watch it, yes. You can still care about it maybe. But you also cannot stop noticing that it is a film. You cannot stop being aware that the characters are actors, that the emotions you are having are responses to particular editing techniques and musical cues and cinematography designed specifically to trigger those responses. You are no longer inside the film. You are in the theater, and you can see both the film and the apparatus that creates the film and the other people watching the film. This is exactly where you are right now, and this is why you feel so strange. This is why the world has lost its color. What makes this even more disorienting is that you cannot go back to being absorbed into the film. You cannot unknow that it is a film. Some people try. They go through various practices and disciplines designed to get them back to that state of simple absorption. They try meditation. They try spiritual practices. They try psychedelics. They try pleasure-seeking. They try distraction and busyness. Some of these things work temporarily. They can get you back into the film for a little while, but the knowledge is still there waiting. And eventually you will notice the apparatus again, you will see the strings, and the world will flatten out once more. This is what is happening in you right now. You are in the theater now, you have seen the machinery. And the machinery is all you can see for a while. The film still exists, but it looks different from the theater. The colors are dimmer. The sounds are more obviously constructed. The emotional hooks do not catch in you the way they used to. You are not broken. You are not depressed in the sense that your brain chemistry is malfunctioning. You are estranged from illusion, and that estrangement is exactly as uncomfortable as it sounds, and it is exactly as necessary as it sounds, and there is no way around it. The temptation in this state is to believe that you have become more real, more authentic, more true to yourself. You have seen through the illusions, and now you are operating at a deeper level of truth. But this is a seductive distortion. What you have actually done is moved your point of consciousness. You have moved it from being inside the film to being in the theater. But this does not mean you are now at some final level of reality. It just means you have shifted position. The theater is also a construction. The glass of your awareness, the ability to observe and analyze, these are also constructs, also within the dream, also subject to being seen through if you look carefully enough. There is no final vantage point. There is no permanent position from which you will be able to see everything clearly and finally understand. The unfolding of consciousness does not work that way. What is happening is more like this. Imagine a person who has been living in a house and who has never questioned the nature of the house itself. They move through the rooms naturally. The house seems solid. They do not think about the walls or the architecture, they just live. And then gradually they start to notice things. They notice that certain rooms feel a certain way. They notice that the light comes from certain sources. They notice that there are patterns to how the house works, principles that govern it. And as they notice these things more and more carefully, something shifts. They start to see that the house is not just a container they live in. The house is a structure that has been shaping them. The layout of the rooms has been determining where they can go. The design of the windows has been determining what they can see. And once you see this, you cannot stop seeing it. But here is where it gets subtle. Seeing that the house shapes you does not mean you can suddenly be free of the house. You are still in the house. You still have to move through the rooms. You still have to use the doors and the windows. What changes is that you are no longer completely unconscious of the structure you are moving through. You are no longer in the kind of pure absorption where the house is completely transparent to you. But you are not outside the house either. You cannot get outside the house. You can only become more conscious of the house while you are still inside it. This is why the flatness persists. This is why the distance remains. You are in the strange position of being both inside and outside simultaneously, of seeing the mechanisms while still being subject to them, of understanding the construction while still being constructed by it. And this creates a peculiar kind of sadness that is not quite sadness. It is more like a persistent acknowledgement of the way things actually are. It is an end to the possibility of simple absorption. It is an end to the possibility of being fully enchanted. You can still find joy, but it will be a different kind of joy, and you cannot imagine right now what that would feel like, because right now you are in the theater, and the theater is not yet your home. This displacement you feel, this is not failure. This is not evidence that you are broken or cold or emotionally dead inside. This is evidence that something in you is beginning to see clearly. And clear seeing in its early stages does not feel good. It feels cold and strange and lonely. It feels like you have been exiled from the world you used to inhabit. And in a sense, you have. The world of simple enchantment, the world where things had obvious meaning and obvious emotional resonance, that world is no longer available to you. You have eaten from the tree of knowledge, and you cannot unknow what you have seen. The isolation of this experience is almost as difficult as the experience itself, because there is no one you can really talk to about it. If you try to explain it to someone who is still fully absorbed in the film, they will not understand. They will think you are depressed. They will suggest solutions that are designed to get you back into absorption. They will say things like, maybe you should take a vacation, or you should spend more time with friends, or you should do more things that make you happy. And some of these suggestions might be well-intentioned, and some of them might even help temporarily. But they are fundamentally aimed at helping you unsee what you have seen. They are aimed at getting you back into the trance. And the real crisis is that you cannot go back. You can pretend for a while, you can perform the absorption, but underneath, you will know it is performance. And there are people who have gone through this, who understand it, who can see it in you, but they are not many and they are not easy to find. And even when you find them, there is something about the territory you are in together that does not lend itself to the kind of connection and warmth that you might have had before. Because part of what you have lost is the capacity for simple identification with others based on shared illusions. You can still love people, but it is a different kind of love. It is quieter. It is less merged. It carries in it the knowledge that the other person is also a kind of mechanism, also operating according to programs they did not write, also asleep in ways they cannot see. And this knowledge, while true and clarifying, is not warm. It is not cozy. It does not make you feel less alone. So you are left in a kind of exile, in the flatness and the distance, in the cold clarity, in the isolation. And you begin to wonder if this is going to be permanent. You begin to wonder if you have damaged something in yourself that cannot be repaired. You begin to wonder if the price of seeing is loneliness forever. You begin to wonder if other people are having this experience too, or if you are uniquely broken, uniquely cursed, to see what other people do not see. But here is what you need to understand. This flatness is not permanent, but it is also not going to resolve in the way you hope. The world is not going to get its color back. The emotional intensity is not going to return to what it was. The absorption is not going to come back in the same form. What is actually happening is something much more subtle. What is happening is that you are learning to live in the theater. You are learning to be conscious of the machinery and still move through the world. You are learning to see the illusion and not be destroyed by it. This is the most difficult phase of this particular transformation, the phase where you are between two modes of being and fully at home in neither. In the old mode, you were absorbed in the illusion, but you had the pleasure of simple engagement. In the new mode, you will be conscious of the machinery, but you will have learned to move through it with a kind of freedom that you cannot imagine right now, because you are still in the shock of seeing. Right now, the seeing is overwhelming the ability to move. You see the strings and the seeing paralyzes you, but eventually the seeing becomes normal. The strings are always there, but you get used to them. You learn to dance with awareness of the strings instead of in ignorance of them. What happens in that transition is that you lose something and you gain something. What you lose is the possibility of simple enchantment. What you lose is the possibility of being completely absorbed in the way things appear on the surface. What you lose is the comfort of not knowing, but what you gain is a kind of freedom that is not available to people who are still fully in the trance. You gain the ability to see the world as it actually is, not as your fear and your desire have painted it. You gain the ability to see other people as they actually are, not as the narrative you have constructed about them. You gain a kind of reality that is more real than the enchanted world, and it is lonelier and colder and stranger, but it is real. But I want to be very direct about something that is crucial here. This clarity you are developing, this ability to see through the mechanisms, this does not make you superior. This does not make you more enlightened or more evolved or more real than other people. This is a trap that many people fall into at this stage, and it is a trap that can turn the whole process sour and prevent you from actually integrating what you are learning. The seeing is not a sign that you are more developed than other people. It is a sign that you are developing differently. It is a sign that you have become conscious of something that was previously unconscious. But consciousness itself is not an achievement. Consciousness is just consciousness. It is not better. It is not worse. It is just different. And there is a particular kind of arrogance that can develop here when you are in the theater and you can see the machinery and most other people are still absorbed in the film. You can start to feel contempt for them. You can start to see their enthusiasm as naive. You can start to see their joy as delusion. You can start to feel superior because you have seen through what they are still caught in. And this feeling is understandable. It is a natural response to seeing something that others do not see. But it is also the exact opposite of understanding, because understanding, real understanding, includes the recognition that you are also in a mechanism. Your ability to see is also a mechanism. Your consciousness that you see through illusion is also a kind of construction. Your superiority is also an illusion, just a more sophisticated one. The clarity has not freed you from illusion. It has just moved you to a different room within the illusion. So what you need to understand about yourself right now in this flatness, in this distance, is this. You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not emotionally dead or spiritually superior, or on some special path that others are not on. You are simply in the process of reorganizing how you relate to reality. You are in the process of developing a new operating system, and the operating system you are currently installing is not compatible with the enchanted world. It is not compatible with simple absorption. It is not compatible with ignorance-based joy. So there is a necessary period of neutrality. There is a necessary period where nothing feels quite right and everything feels a bit flat and strange. This period is not a failure. This period is not evidence that something is wrong with you. This period is the cost of transformation, and the cost is loneliness and emptiness and the loss of simple pleasure. But the other thing that happens during this period, the thing that you cannot see right now because you are still too close to it, is that you are developing a new capacity. You are developing the capacity to see what is actually here, beneath all the narrative and all the construction. And there is something profoundly moving about that once you get to it. There is something deeply real about simply seeing what is in front of you without immediately coating it in meaning and emotion and desire and fear. There is something quiet and powerful about being able to be present to things as they are, without needing them to be any particular way. But before you get to that quiet power, you have to go through this strange neutral space. You have to learn to live here without losing yourself completely to despair. You have to learn to move through the world while being aware of its mechanisms. You have to learn to be in the film while also being in the theater. This is not something you can do by trying to do it. This is something that happens through repetition and time and a kind of gentle persistence. Every time you notice that you are seeing the mechanism and it is flattening the world, instead of fighting it, you acknowledge it. You let it be there. You do not try to get back to the enchantment. You do not try to escape the flatness. You simply acknowledge both at once, the mechanism and the world, the seeing and the illusion, the theater and the film. What emerges over time, and this cannot be rushed, is a kind of integration. You do not go back to being fully absorbed in the film. That is not possible. But you also do not remain trapped in cold observation of the mechanism. What happens instead is that you develop a kind of dual consciousness. You are simultaneously in the film and aware that it is a film. You are simultaneously engaging with life and aware of the ways that you are engaging. You are simultaneously feeling emotions and knowing that emotions are constructions. This simultaneity is strange and it takes some getting used to, but it is also the key to the transition you are in the middle of. This is what the old wisdom traditions were pointing at when they talked about acting without attachment or participating in the dance without being the dance. It is not that you become emotionless or disconnected. It is that you participate fully while also being able to see the participation itself. You can love people without needing them to be anything other than what they are. You can feel fear without being convinced that you are in danger. You can feel joy without needing it to last forever. You can be completely engaged and also completely aware that you are engaged. This is the precision of being human. This is the delicate balance, but right now you are not there yet. Right now you are in the in-between space and it is lonely and cold and strange. And I want to tell you something about this loneliness that might help. The loneliness you are feeling is not evidence that you are broken. The loneliness you are feeling is part of the process. The loneliness is the experience of being between two ways of being. In a certain sense, you have died to the old way, and you have not yet been born into the new way. You are in the space between life and death, and spaces between things are always lonely, but they are also always temporary. You cannot stay in a doorway forever. You are either in one room or the other, or you are in the process of moving between them. And the moving between, the traveling through the doorway is where you are. The flatness that you are experiencing, the way that things have lost their charge, this is not a problem to be solved. This is information about your consciousness. It is telling you that you are developing. It is telling you that the old mechanisms are starting to fail in their purpose, which is to keep you unconscious. The mechanisms are beginning to become visible to you. And as they become visible, they lose their ability to completely run your life. You can see the button they are trying to press, so you have some choice about whether to press it. But the seeing has not yet given you the freedom. The seeing has only given you the consciousness of the mechanism. And consciousness of the mechanism, without yet having the capacity to live skillfully in that consciousness, creates this strange emptiness. So what do you do in this emptiness? What do you do with your days when nothing seems quite real and nothing seems quite worth doing? This is the crucial question. And the answer is not going to satisfy you, because you are hungry for an answer that will make this state change. But the answer is simply to let it be here, to stop fighting it, to stop trying to get back to the old way, to stop trying to leap forward to the new way, to simply exist in the space between, without needing it to be any different than it is. This sounds passive, and in a way it is. But there is an activity that happens underneath the passivity. The activity is of noticing. The activity is of seeing. The activity is of letting your consciousness settle onto what is actually happening, rather than on how you wish it would be. And this activity, this noticing, this settling into reality as it actually is, this is the beginning of the real transformation. Because the old transformation, the one that got you into this strange flatness, was a transformation of seeing. You began to see the mechanism. But the new transformation, the one that will integrate this seeing and allow you to move again, is a transformation of being. You are learning to be the kind of person who can see and act at the same time. You are learning to hold the tension of knowing and not knowing simultaneously. You are learning to live in paradox, and this cannot be hurried. This has its own timeline. You cannot force yourself to be at peace with the mechanism. You cannot force yourself to be joyful in the theater. These things happen or they do not happen, and they happen according to their own schedule, which is usually much slower than you would like. So what you do in the meantime is you continue. You continue to move your body through the world,